Welcome, everyone. We are just waiting for a few more people to come in. Hey, Spicer, can you keep an eye on the waiting room and just pop them in, because for some reason Zoom won't let you turn off the waiting room now.
Oh, okay.
Cool. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting XMD webinar. We have Esther here with us.
Hey, everyone.
And of course, Fʀᴏᴍ.
What up?
We're going to be going over some drawing techniques with Esther today, or tonight, or wherever you are. If everyone could, just give us a shout out in the chat. Tell us where you're from, and what your goals are for art. So tonight we're going to be going over, Esther's going to be giving a demo, and we're going to be going over some portfolio reviews. If you submitted your portfolio review, we chose a few of them to go over. And then we'll be taking some Q&As, and then we'll tell you about Esther's course. So if you want to, Esther, you can go ahead and share your screen, and we'll get started on the demo.
1 second. So can you guys hear me? Okay. So over here, I'm going to do a little demonstration on how to draw from reference. And let me see if you guys can see the reference right here. Just put it in my Photoshop. So this is the reference that I'm going to be using. And I just want to give you a demonstration just so you can get a feeling of how you can use reference without having to be 100% accurate with it, and to show you how you can get your line work more loose, and that way it's going to give you more freedom to work in your sketch. So I already got started here with the rough sketch, and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to work over and finalize this. So what I like to do when I first start, I will go ahead over here. I drop the flow. I turn this button here on, and I drop the opacity. I usually do that when I'm starting the sketch, and then I'll gradually increase the opacity as I'm finishing the work. Also, if you're wondering, this reference, I got it from the website called Pexels, and they offer free stock pictures for you to use it.
So do you ever like equate like ears to like food or something like that? Like whenever I'm teaching people like the shape of a bicep, I'm like, think of a baguette, you know, or think of like a sub sandwich that's laying on top of your arm. Do you ever like use metaphors to kind of help you figure out shapes?
Oh yes, I definitely use it. Like one of my favorites, I would say, is when I draw the knee, let's say of the back leg. And let's say this is from a lion. This is just a simple version, and for the knee, I will do some sort of ice cream with a cone shape. So that's from the front view, and from the side view, it would pretty much be this, but cut in half.
I will never look at a knee again the same.
But that's just a really simple form to draw it, especially when you're doing dynamic drawings. You don't want to do like all those complex shapes. So doing the ice cream cone is just the best. And for the eyes, let's say for the big cat, I try to think of it like, let's say this is from the front view. Sorry, from the side view. It's going to look like an arrow. Like if we just add values here, this is what it's going to look like. So it's very important that you identify the simple shapes first so you can work towards the complex. And that's what I did on the rough sketch. I just simplified the shapes, and right now I can just go ahead and work on the more complex shapes. For the eyebrows, I'm going to do it in red just so you see the shape that I'm drawing here. To simplify it, I'm going to use a shape that it looks like this, just to keep it simple. And then when I break it down, I'll just go ahead and you're going to see something like this. Kind of looks like a cloud from the side view. Something like that.
So do you do any exercises just to practice like your line work and your, you know, because I know sometimes you're sketchy, but whenever you're drawing that red bit out, it was very, very deliberate strokes that you were putting in there. Was just like one try. Do you have any exercises that you do to?
Yes, I usually, like, I have two types of exercises I like to do. And it's what you call gesture drawings. And in some of my gesture drawings, I try to an exercise that helps me to get my line work pretty loose is to try to draw what I see without taking the pencil from the paper, or in this case, this pen from the tablet. So I'm just going to make connections with all the details that I see in the drawing. And to me, that's a really great technique to keep your drawings just very clean and to the point. So you don't, in other words, like, you would get more confidence in your line work, and you're going to avoid doing things like this. See, because like that's what most artists do, and that's usually a sign of insecurity. So you want to make sure that you're showing confidence in your line work, you know, showing precision. So that's one exercise that I really like to do. And usually when I keep it very sketchy, just for example, like this drawing, is because I'm still trying to figure it out, how I want the style to look like. I'm still playing with the dimensions of the body and the shape. So that would be the occasion where I would keep the sketch pretty rough.
Right.
Yeah. And also another one is to study from other artists. Let's say one of my favorites is Claire Wenling. So I would just go ahead and I'm going to open a page full of reference of drawings from Claire, and I'm just going to try to get the feeling of what her drawing looks like, and I'm going to apply into my drawing. Because I don't know if you know her art, but she keeps her line work pretty clean most of the time, and that's something I really admire about her work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we used to, in our class, we would do that where we wouldn't pick up the pen. She called it contour drawing. And yeah, like we would have to do portraits and all these, like like just bottles and oranges and faces and dogs and all that stuff, and we'd all have to do it with contour drawing, and it was very, very difficult for me.
Did you ever do the blind contour where you had to keep your eyes closed and don't pick up your pen?
Oh yes, I've done that before, and it was. I would say that you should not rely on that type of exercise all the time, but I think it is just a great way to show you how much you're seeing in the reference. Because sometimes, let's say if I'm trying to draw a cylinder, you know, if we do that exercise where you have your eyes closed, if you open your eyes, you're going to start to see better how the angle of that cylinder is positioned on the table, you know. So that's something that you can do quickly in the morning. Sometimes I do that just to warm up. Sometimes I open a reference and sometimes I'm going to have a hard time to look for the angles of, for example, like the head and of this cougar, for example. So I'll do this exercise. I just close my eyes and I just try to draw it, and it helps me to see the big picture.
So have you always been into animals and did you ever want to like be a zoologist or biologist or something like that?
Actually, biologist was one of my main ideas, but just I didn't go any further into it. I also wanted to be a vet, you know, because like you said, I really love animals, but I think that my true love is for art, and I decided to pursue that career instead. But I also thought about probably using my art into, let's say, you know what, one of those biology books, like school books, where you have the drawing of the animal, and the students are, let's say for someone who's studying for to become a vet, and then you have the drawings of all the parts, body parts of the animal, and that's something that I wanted to do. I still want to do it, but I think it would be nice to give it a try.
Oh yeah.
Also, something I want to mention here about line work is the importance of giving a little bit of variety into your sketch. And as you can see, you're going to see that in some areas I left the line work just a bit thicker, in some areas just thinner. And usually the areas where I leave it thinner is most of the time where you're going to see the features of the face on the positive side here of the animal. And just to reinforce the three-dimensionality of the animal's head and the whole body. And then I use the thicker lines most of the time to separate some body parts from others. For example, here, if I were to draw this paw, I would make the contour line thicker, just so people can understand that this paw right here is coming forward and is in front of this one as well. And when I draw the nails, I just suggest just a really simple shape right here. I don't go ahead and make something super detailed, like especially the fur. You just want to try to think of how you're going to simplify these bigger shapes, and no, always, like I said, always keep it simple. And don't try to like draw the fur on every single corner of the drawing, because otherwise you're going to be adding a lot of unnecessary detail where there's no need to have it, you know. You always want to have like a focal point for your artwork. So if you're going to draw a lot of fur, let's say, and your focal point is the face, then you want to add a little suggestion of fur in there. But I'm going to do that later on once I'm done with this section here. And when you're drawing something like, let's say, for example, this leg is coming forward, I always try to think of a cylinder. Sometimes in my artwork, I'm going to do some curves like this to reinforce that idea. Or sometimes I'm just going to keep it clean. It really depends on the feeling that I want to give. And also, I wanted to mention something very important, like if you're going to draw from reference, if you wanna add something different in the pose, you gotta make sure that you understand the anatomy. Otherwise, you're not going to know why the cougar is looking like this, like in this specific position, for example. So if you're having a hard time trying to exaggerate it, just stop for a bit and try to do a little bit of anatomy study so you understand the tridimensionality of the body parts, and eventually it's going to become much easier for you to draw everything else. And as you can see here, sometimes you're going to notice that I'm not going to draw every single line for the fingers. Sometimes you just have to suggest, and that goes to what I was talking about, to keep the line work simple. Same thing I did over here. You don't have to draw every single division here. That is up to you, but sometimes I just go ahead and I give a little break over here and then I continue the line work here.
Yeah, even in my sculpting, I have to keep that in mind that I don't need to draw the muscle from beginning to end. There's a whole lot of other things going on, and yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And as you can see, that's a concept, like you said, you can use anything that is art related, from sculpting to drawing.
Yeah, because even the way that you're breaking down, the shapes and the course and everything, like it changed the way that I look at like large cats. Like before it was just a lot of fur, but now I think of it more of like in geometric shapes. Because like even in the beginning, whenever you first start, you're like triangle, square. You're like really, really breaking it down into those shapes, and just even that quick introduction. It taught me how to look at animal anatomy and be able to break it down into those very, very simple shapes that are highly consistent. You can pretty much always count on them. They'll be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller here and there, the variance of life. But if you can just block it out with the ways that you were teaching, it's going to be really, really hard to go wrong.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And also you will learn much faster to draw all of these animals. Like if you simplify the shapes, let's say you're learning big cat anatomy, and then you decide to learn horse anatomy. In order for you to understand it, you have to just compare the shape. Let's say for the shoulders, the dimension between and all the shapes from their legs, between big cats and horses is going to look completely different. But you're going to notice that, let's say the only difference you're going to see is the proportions, but you're going to see a lot of similarities in the muscle structure and the bone structure. You're going to see the same muscles from the biceps, the triceps, all connected in there, but they're going to change depending on how the animal has adapted to that environment. So if you keep that in mind, it's just becomes so much easier for you to learn any animal you want, literally. Let's say you never drew birds before, just think about how they adapted their bodies in order, why do they fly? Why do they have that bone structure? And that's going to help you to figure it out, your anatomy. It's all about comparing anatomy between all these animals, including humans.
And the funny thing is, like coming from an environment art background, even in architecture, you have anatomy. I mean, everything can be broken down into simple shapes. And like if you're breaking apart some reference for like a building, you always got to break it down into smaller shapes, especially if you're working like modularly, building it in pieces that you can reuse over and over. You always got to find the simple shapes. So I think that it goes with all art.
Oh yeah, that's totally true. Especially in architecture. Actually, I think if you draw anything, when you are simplifying these shapes, you always have to think of the perspective. Because sometimes when people think about simplifying shapes, they're going to draw the triangle, but then they're not going to understand what angle does that represent in that, in that specific situation. So you always have to keep in mind the perspective behind it.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Akumu. Is anatomy a prerequisite for drawing gestures? I'm studying 3D animation, and I feel this skill would be good for breaking down key poses. And I say the lioness looks great so far.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely very important that you have like if you're going to do gesture drawing, you have to understand the anatomy. But again, gesture drawing is going to be a mix of the feeling of what you see, but also a little bit of the structure behind it. Let's say, for example, for the hip area, when I'm doing animals, I'm going to simplify it and I'm going to do this shape. And over here, we're going to have the pelvis, and then we're going to have the area where the femur is going to connect. So from there, you can already understand what is the perspective of what you're drawing, and that is going to help you a lot in your gesture work, because gesture is about like, you gotta have confidence into drawing that line of, you gotta be very objective. And in order to do that, it's a must that you have to know, the anatomy and, a little bit of perspective.
So with drawing animals, like a lot of 2D artists and 3D artists always have their kind of their anatomy parts that they struggled with at some point, or maybe still struggle, like eyes or hands. I know, like, tons of different anatomy from all the different types of animals, but do you have any that maybe at one point you struggled with, or any type of stuff you may still struggle with?
Well, I would say that I would struggle with, when I officially started to study anatomy. I think one of the first animals that I really started to dig deep into it was big cats, and to me that was really hard because, like we were talking about, I was focusing too much on the details. So I was seeing all the little details over here, and then I would see some little bumps on the surface of the animal, and I wouldn't understand what was going on. So to me, that was just a big struggle. And when that happens, I think you just have to give time, to get used to seeing things from far away. Like, especially if you're doing your early sketches, always make sure that you're doing it from far away. Don't start your gesture drawings like this, because when you stop the drawing, you're going to notice that a lot of things are going to look off. So you got to make sure that you focus on the big picture first, and you're going to notice that you're going to learn how to draw these animals much better. And I think I would say that for some reason the hardest one for me to draw would be horses. I've gotten much better recently, but it's just that they're such compact animals that I would say that you have to be very accurate when you draw them. You have to make sure that the perspective looks like 100% accurate. Otherwise, it's just gonna look really wacky. So I think that horses, for that reason, they are pretty. I think they are. It's a complex subject, but it's not impossible. It's all about doing a lot of drawings.
Yeah, it's like if you see any type of animal that's got really tight fur, or where you can see all the musculature, you can definitely tell when something's off.
Oh yeah. So right here, as you can see, I already started to add the pencil strokes. And something to keep in mind is when you're doing them, always make sure that you're following the flow and the shapes of the face. Don't go ahead and do like something messy like this, because you're going to lose the flow of the drawing. So make sure that you organize your brush strokes in some sections. You can do the crosshatch as well. So the type of strokes that I like to do is I try to think of the flow of the fur in the face, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do the pencil strokes according to the direction that the fur is going in that certain area. Or sometimes I'm just going to follow the two-dimensionality of this shape like this. This is not necessarily where the fur is going, but it helps to give the feeling that I want for the final look. And also, I think you might have noticed, I kept at first this layer right here on a little bit darker, and the reason why is because you having the white background sometimes can blind you, and if you paint, especially in a computer screen for long hours with the white background, especially if you're doing a painting, that can actually somewhat blind you, and you're going to start to mistakenly paint some values in a way that is not favoring your drawing. So I always go back and forward over here just to relax my eyes a little bit.
Master tip right there.
And then I'm gonna pick here a value just for the overall value here. And also it's up to you. Sometimes I like to remove the rough sketch here, or sometimes I just like to keep it. Sometimes the rough sketch can give a structure to your cleanup. But if you're still not convinced to keep it, you can still like drop the opacity over here just a little bit. Sometimes I don't like to completely remove the rough sketch. I just like to at least leave just something in there. But of course, that will depend on what type of project that I'm doing.
So did you ever get into like dragons and Pegasus and all those mythical creatures? Have you ever put some of those together for clients or yourself?
Oh yes, actually, dragons. For some reason, it's a subject that I really love to draw. But it's been so long that I have not drawn them. But but I definitely did that before with some clients. And but then also, if you also are interested into drawing these mythical creatures, like I said, I highly recommend you to study animal anatomy, because all these mythical creatures, they are based on something that on different animals. Like, it's just a mix of a bunch of animals that exist in reality, and again, they have to make sense in the universe that you're creating. So if you're making a dragon, you gotta think about, okay, so how the structure of the wings is gonna look like, and if you're going to be basing the wings into, let's say, maybe a bat wings, or you're going to use an ancient dinosaur anatomy structure, and then you're gonna apply that into the dragon. So that's something for you to always keep in mind. And of course, you always use reference. Like, even if you're going to draw from imagination, make sure that you did enough drawings from reference, and then you're just going to reinforce your studies into the drawing for imagination exercise.
Yeah, because right now I'm sculpting something, and I got to sculpt like a like a large chicken. Basically, is what it looks like. But I don't want to do a chicken. I want it to look a little bit more like, um, a little bit more like prehistoric or dragon-like. So,
Uh-huh.
um, uh, where would you like? What type of resources would you look up for, like dragon anatomy? Would you say, okay, that's a lizard, and a snake, and a bat put together? Like how would you kind of
Oh, yes.
guide someone into, like, yeah, I would pay attention to this, this, and this if I was going to create a dragon?
Uh-huh. First of all, like, if I'm having a hard time trying to create a mythical creature, I'm going to look at what other artists have done. I'm going to see how they apply their style in order to break down the shapes, and what if they base that into birds, or if they just use dinosaurs as a base. So I'll do that first, and then from there I'm going to decide which animal's anatomy I'm going to be applying on it. Because I've seen a lot of artists, like, for example, they would do like big cat hybrid with a dragon. They just put, like, those Chinese dragon whiskers.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's like a
So
tiger
yeah,
head with a snake body, and
yeah, exactly. So I thought that that was a really cool mix of animal anatomy, and they just, they just do a dragon out of it. So there's a lot of possibilities. But I think it's very important to first, look for what other artists have done, and then try to come up with your own ideas. And over here, this is a tool that I like to use. We'll go ahead and I use a soft brush, oh sorry, eraser, and now we'll do these adjustments over here. I also do it over here in the line work, especially where the light source is coming from. So I'll go ahead and I'll just erase just a little bit. Sometimes I don't need to do it. Sometimes I'll just get it at first. But as I'm doing a painting, sometimes I'm going to change my mind and make different decisions depending on what is going to look better, what would be the best decision to make. Over here, I'm not necessarily following the shading that is in the reference. I'm just kind of like coming up with something different, giving a little bit of personality to the painting. For this step, in order to make it easier, you always, like I said, try to understand what is going underneath, like the shape of the skull and everything. So when you're adding the shading, it's not going to be that hard to figure it out.
So in your mentorship, what would you be focusing on with the students?
Oh yes. So what we would be focusing on is learning to identify the primary shapes first, because in order for you to learn animal anatomy, like let's say if you want to draw, if you want to, let's say if you want to focus on drawing animals, like you want to draw like horses, lions, dogs, wolves, whatever, you have to learn how to compare their anatomy. And we're going to, like I said, start with primary shapes. So for the head, let's say we're going to start with a cube. And then let's say we're doing here for a lion, then we're going to apply those same shapes, or maybe you're going to use another one, let's say for a horse from the side view. And then from there, you're going to see how easy it is for you to identify how does the dimensions of their bodies work. And then our focus would be to work from reference. So let's say I'm going to give you a reference and you're going to try to build this same primary shapes over the picture, and then you're going to go ahead and try to redraw that same drawing, but trying to use some principles of gesture drawing and try to capture the perspective and everything else and try to add your own personality into your drawings. And that's a very crucial skill for you to have, especially in the industry that I'm working on, which is illustration and character designs. So in order for you to do dynamic sketches, you must have to know how to, not to stick with the reference 100%, but to give more personality to drawings, and you're going to have more freedom to draw anything you want from different poses, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Because I always tell my students, we can sculpt anything on the body, academically, and everything could be correct, but it could still be boring, at the same time. It's there's an anatomy study and then there's a sculpture, like and what you said, about bringing feeling and your own personal style into it. I think that's at least in the mentorships that I've done, seems like a whole lot of it has to deal with just the confidence of, hey, I am not bad. Like
Oh yeah.
I do have a skill. I do have that thing. Did you develop that on your own, or did you have a mentor of your own? Like, was there a moment where you're like, I am pretty confident about this now. I can, sculpt without fear or doubt or over analyzing or guessing yourself?
Well, I would say yes, I did take a lot of mentorship classes. I also learned a little bit of my own, but I think that confidence finally came when I actually started to work in the industry, because at first I wasn't really confident because I was always wondering like, why are they approaching me to work to get work from me? And then I just started to realize that if they approach me, it's because there's something that I'm doing that it looks right. And of course, like I think that in life there's always something new to learn. But in my point of view, I think that in the position that I am right now, I think I'm pretty confident of my skills. And like I said, there's always room to learn, but what I have, I think it's already enough, to get work in the industry and things like that.
Yeah, for me it was client work, and then took a bunch of mentorships myself, and like most of it was learning, like you've gone deep into anatomy, I've gone deep into anatomy, and that kind of demystified a lot of what I was seeing in my reference. I was like, oh, okay, that's a deltoid.
Yes.
That's a lateral head of the deltoid. Oh, okay, and that allowed me to have not a workflow, but at least confidence in the shapes that I was creating. And then through that, I was able to develop a style because I wasn't so,
Oh, yes.
like, oh, what is that shadow? What does that shadow mean? So yeah, for me, that's kind of like where it started making that turn, was when I started understanding, like you said, what's happening underneath.
Oh, yes. No, you're totally right. That's the same goes to me. Like the more I started to understand what was going underneath, because sometimes I would draw these animals from different point of perspectives, and then a muscle will pop out there that I would understand like what's going on. And sometimes there's going to be something that I might not understand it at first, but I know I will have the confidence, to figure that out. Because once you have the base, once you know how to identify these basic shapes, then it's not a big of a deal. And I think that's how you keep on growing. If you just keep on studying, no matter what level you are. If you're already working in the industry, I think it's still good to study, because there is so much to learn. Like for you to push your skills to the max.
Yeah, I would say like when you get in the industry is when you need to study even more. Like
Oh yes.
it's not the I made it, I'm done. No, it's like
Oh
you know what I mean.
yes. No, you're totally right.
Yeah, once you actually make it in, then it actually matters if you do something wrong.
Oh yeah. No, that's true. Like there's some client work that I do, and of course, there will always have something that the client are going to give to me that is something that maybe I never do before. Maybe an animal, let's say, let me think about something that maybe I never do before, like a buffalo or something. But at the same time, I know that if that happens, I'll go ahead and spend some time on the side, do a little bit of studies for that animal, and I'll go ahead and do the designs. And and I know that is going to look, I'm going to be confident that I'm going to do a good work. But like I said, you got to have that base of, you know, comparing anatomy, knowing what is going to make a buffalo look like a buffalo, or a crocodile look like a crocodile. And from there, you just figure it out how to troubleshoot when you're doing some client work.
So when you're getting client briefs, do they usually just because I know for mine, I have to like jump into a bunch of different styles. Like I have to jump into a sci-fi style with semi-realistic, and then I have to jump into another style that's highly stylized, and then another one that's cinematic based, and another one that's like concept art that I'm getting that I have to replicate, that's nowhere near anything I would do naturally, but you know, like we still get the job done. Is there any like, have you ever had any of those issues, or are they usually hiring you specifically for how you draw, or do they try to have you draw different styles or different types of ways?
Oh, yes, definitely. Most of the time, I'm going to have clients that they're going to hire me to draw something completely different. Sometimes it's out of my, let's say, comfort zone, but I usually take this type of jobs. However, if it's a theme that is way out of my skill, something that I'm not really knowledgeable about, let's say robots or cars, that's something that I would not do. Like, let's say if I do a concept art, I can just do a basic drawing of a car, but I'm not going to be confident enough to go further because I know that I can do, because I'm more specialized in doing like animals. You know, I can do backgrounds as well, but there are going to be some subjects that I'm not going to take it. But again, it really depends. Like if it's a more cartoony looking car, then yes, I can do that. But if it's something more like, let's say, Transformers type of a movie, then that's not something that I'm really specialized on, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Esther, would you like to move on to a couple of portfolio reviews? And then after we do that, we can take some questions, and then
Oh yeah.
we can come back to this if people want to
Oh
continue
sure.
watching.
Yeah, of course. Let me go ahead here and pull this up.
Portfolio reviews are my favorite part of this job, by the way. I love doing this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah. So I'm gonna open here. First, I'm gonna start with. Let me see if I just to check if I spell your name wrong. Copalin. I don't know. Sorry if I spell it wrong, but so anyway, we're gonna get started with your portfolio. And first of all, I think that your work looks very adorable. I really like that you have that skill of drawing anthropomorphic animals, and that's something that is really hard to do. You have to know both animal anatomy and human anatomy as well, and then you gotta mix both things. Like we were discussing before, like with drawing dragons or unicorns and things like that. And so something that I really think that is nice is that you have not only drawings that are your own style, but also you did here a little drawing of I forgot the name of the movie. Oh yeah, Cats Don't Dance. Yeah, and that's really good to have in your portfolio because it shows the client that you can actually diversify your style and adapting to whatever project that they're working on. So that's pretty good. So right here, let me see. So over here, I picked one artwork that I thought that it would be good to give a little demonstration. Actually, I already did the sketch over, but I'm gonna go over here and explain to you some little things that you can actually do in your work in order to enhance and give more contrast into your paintings. So I'm gonna put it in black and white just so it's easier for you to understand it, because I think that you might have to go back a little bit into studying values, because one of the mistakes that I see some people doing is that when they think of values and putting contrast into a drawing, they think that you have to put like 100% white and 100% black next to each other, but you have to think of contrast as if, let's say, you don't have to go both extremes. It's all about value relationships. So let's say that over here is your brightest, and then over here is your darkest. Depending on how you put the both of them, you're going to get a really nice composition. And usually when you put a lot of whites over here, it's just it becomes, how can I say, that you're drawing loose that three-dimensionality. So you have a lot of blacks here and you don't have that balance between mid-tones. So I'm gonna go ahead here and pull out the quick paint over. And just so you understand, this was just a quick representation, but I want you to understand that when you're working with shading and lighting, you have to think about how these values are going to transition from shadow to light. So instead of you putting the reflection of the sun here into the water, like just put all white, instead of doing that, you can just add just a little brightness over here because you want the focus to be on the deer's face. So when you shift the attention over here and you put your brightest values and darkest over here, the attention goes towards the deer's head. And also, you can also work over here on the, on the silhouette of the deer. You did just a little bit, but I noticed that you used too much of the soft brush, and you must have that balance between hard and soft edges. So for this case, I would work with a regular flat brush like this, and you go ahead and smudge the edges little by little, because you don't want to have everything blurred with a soft brush. So that's the suggestion that I have for you. And if we put this in colors, it does, like I said, when you're painting darker values, avoid adding blacks and like in colors that are in the gray family. If you put blacks in there, it just makes your painting look just a little bit muddy. So what you can do is just add a little bit of color and try to remove that black from there. But once you understand a little bit of the concept of values and how to group them out, it's going to help you a lot when you paint with colors. So, but yeah, but overall, really good job. And now I'm going to go over with Alexa. Also, just before I go to Alexa, I just want to mention something to you. I see that you have a lot of variety here. You have characters that they have like, you have them in different poses and everything, but I think that you can add more into your portfolio. Try to show more of these characters of yours interacting with each other, because that's going to give you more job opportunities. So the clients will see that you're capable of doing characters interacting in a scene, that you can create a story around it. So here we have Alexa, and I think your work is really adorable. I really like this painting that you did of these animals. And I can see from here that you have a pretty good understanding of how to apply colors and values. There is just one painting here. This is the one that I would like to go over. But again, I really like what you did here. I like your style, the way that you drew the horse. I think it's very cool. Yeah, you have a pretty good understanding of the form. I like that. And one of the things I wanted to discuss with you about is, again, the same thing that we were discussing with the other portfolio, and it's gonna go in values. Let me just go ahead and. So over here, we can see that in your painting, from what I understand, your main focus, I would assume, is to have the horse over here, to enhance the horse's head and have the moon right behind it. But you have to keep in mind that when you have one source of light, especially the moon, that is going to be the brightest, then your secondary light cannot be as strong. And usually when you have two sources of lights that they have the same intensity, that's going to make your drawing look a little bit flat. So on this demonstration that I did here, it was just really real quick. It's just to show you that to keep the composition a bit more interesting, you could just drop the values that are in the background, and you're gonna have the focus here in the horse only. So like I said, always think about value relationship. You don't have to go super crazy here on the whites. Just keep it simple, you know, and try to gradually work towards the higher values and think about where you want the focal point to be. And also I did a quick drawing over here. And the reason why I did it is because I like it. Like, first of all, I like your style and everything, but I still think that the angle of the horse's head, to me, it looks a little bit confusing, because if you notice the mouth over here, you're gonna see this angle right over here. And if you're trying to draw the horse from the side view, then the mouth, then the lips would be looking this way. And the forehead right over here, this is popping out way too much. From the side view, you're going to have, the forehead is not going to be like showing up that much. So you got to make sure that you keep this shape right here. And also the ears, you can make them a little bit longer. And but again, this is just a simple drawing of like the basic shapes of the horse, and it's the anatomy of the head. So it's just something for you to keep in mind. Try to do it for now on. Whenever you do your paintings, try to do a sketch over, thinking of the anatomy, especially on your old drawings, and try to see where you can make the adjustments on it, and then try to paint that again. I think that would be a great exercise for you. Yeah, but again, great work. So we have here the work from Roxy. Great. And I think this looks really adorable. Like the graphic look that you gave here to your drawing. You know, you had the colors and we have the contour line. That's very interesting. I like how you added here the flowers in the background, and it gives more personality to your drawing. I really like it. And right over here, I did a little sketch over, and if you watched the demonstration I did of the big cat that I was just drawing, I talk about the line weight, and I think that's something that you might want to experiment a little bit, because if you notice, your lines over here, they're pretty even. They're just following the same patterns, and I think that makes it, let's say, and that makes it too predictable. So you want to make sure that you surprise the viewer. So try to do a little bit of some variations on it, so you can give a little bit more of three-dimensionality, especially here in the region where the snout is. You know, because you want to separate the snout from the rest of the face. And then over here, I drew a little bit of the zygmatic arc, and that's going to be very prominent on big cats. And if you were to paint this again, I would highly suggest you to make sure that try to enhance that feature. You know, all the features that make a lion look like a lion, or a leopard look like a leopard, you got to make sure that you put them in there. And then on this layer, I just made some little adjustments on some things because for the leopard, there's now is gonna look thicker over here. And now remember, they have really big canines, so the contour that you see over here is gonna be because of those canines that are underneath all this area here over the bones. And then I enhanced a little bit of the eyebrows, again, like because they're gonna have very thick eyebrows, especially mountain lions. This is gonna be very prominent, but again, leopards, lions, they're gonna have that much thicker, so try to add a little bit of line work in that section as well. And again, the fur inside the ears is mostly going to be white, so I just add a really rough example over here, just so you keep that in mind, because it was not white over here. So, and also for the eyes, I made the eyes to look a little bit more cat-like, because the contour of a big cat eye, it's gonna look as if they're going to have like an outline around it. I would say you think of it like, you know, when women they put makeup and you're gonna have the darker line here around the eyes. So you gotta make sure that you put that visual cue. And that's from the front view. And think of the simple shape, like if you were to draw an abstract shape, this is what it actually looks like.
It's a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Spicer said, just think of a cup of coffee from the front view, and from the side view, you just draw that arrow. And let me see. And yeah, and that's it for this one. And again, I really like what you did. It reminds me a bit of what Loish does. Like, I know Loish doesn't draw animals, but she draw girls, and she's going to have some graphic designs here right in the back. Sometimes she's going to add some flowers and some cool things going on. So that's something that you might want to explore it too. Not only with, let's say, flowers, but maybe you can add some abstract colors in the background and put your animals maybe jumping in different poses, and use the colors in your favor. And I'm gonna go for the last one from Sibylia. And I must say that I think your work is awesome. Like, I look at this, and to be honest, I have nothing to say. I think you did a great job here on the fur. I think you really captured the essence of the animal and everything. The use of brush strokes. That's really a really well done job. So I really like that you have you have a lot of like really good studies here of animal anatomy, and that's something that is really good to have in your portfolio, because you want to show the client that you know how these
Sorry
animals.
to interrupt, but
Oh, sorry.
we're just seeing your Photoshop.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
I think you need to share the screen and not the window.
Oh, okay. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
1 second. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So over here. So at first I was talking about this work right here of this painting. And over here we have some horse drawings. And I really like this studies. Like as I was saying, it's really important that you have your portfolio like studies from like different animals, like the structure of the bones and everything. So you show the client that you understand the shapes, and it's something to keep in mind. Not only, I mean, she's already doing it, but I recommend it for the other portfolios that I just talked about. I think that it's very important that you go ahead and try to show a little bit of anatomy studies in your social medias. It's going to give you a lot of, let's say, job opportunities.
So if you had someone with this type of skill and talent, and they weren't able to get in, get some clients' attention, what would you suggest they do?
I think that if you're trying to get the client's attention, try to see what other artists from the industry, what they have in their portfolio. Try to analyze it and see what you can apply it in your own style. That's what I was doing, because at first I was sharing my stuff on social media and I wasn't really getting the type of work that I was striving for. So I started to look for artists that I really admire, and I started to just like not mimic their style, but like I was trying to use the same themes and put it on my own style. So I would show them, like, for example, if I want to do more character designs, and I started to show them more character designs, a variation of like character designs and everything else. So that's something that you always have to keep in mind. If you put your work out there, try to think about what type of audience that you want to attract. Because sometimes I see some artists that they want, let's say they want to work with character design, but all they have in their portfolio is just drawings of buildings, and if they see your portfolio, they're going to think that you're going to draw buildings for them. So you always have to keep it in mind, like just sharing your portfolio, the content that you want to work on for the client. And to be, again, going back to this work over here, like I said, I don't have much to say. I think you're already doing a great job. I would just tell you to keep on going, show all the types of, different drawings that you can do. It's also interesting you have a drawing of a human. It shows the clients that you can actually draw humans for them. But also keep in mind, if you are able to draw humans, but maybe you're not very comfortable drawing them, then I would recommend it to remove that from your portfolio, just to avoid giving the impression to the client that you actually want to draw that, but you don't want to, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I think maybe my one suggestion is maybe you can try to use different brush sets, because sometimes when you use the same brush pack, your paintings are eventually going to start to become a little bit predictable. So it's always good to surprise the audience and try to apply these brushes in a different way, or use a different brush pack. So that's something that I would recommend to you, because it can become quite repetitive. You can see some brush strokes over here that they're repeating just a little bit too much. And I know that the focus over here is the moose, but I think this here, maybe you can just add a little bit more variety. I still like them, and it looks pretty great, but it's just a suggestion. Like, if you feel like it's something that you want to try, just go for it. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Just try to experiment with brush strokes. I think that would be great. But again, your work is just amazing. So really good. You have a really good job here.
So I notice a lot of your work. It has a very like whimsical, like I don't know, like when Disney puts a really fun, beautiful world together, it looks like your stuff kind of like fits in there.
Oh,
Is,
yeah.
can you kind of talk about like, I know you touched on it in terms of looking at people that are in that industry and kind of using what works for them towards your style. But can you kind of, is there any way that you could articulate how you know, capture that essence or what that essence is to you?
Oh, yes. So, actually, that's something that I usually hear from a lot of people. They see that I have a little bit of that Disney style. And I did a lot of studies on movies like, especially The Lion King. And I know this movie is not from Disney, but I drew a lot from that movie called Spirit, that horse, and Bambi, and all sorts of Disney movies that they have animals. And in order for you to really absorb that style from whatever you're drawing, I highly recommend you have to really spend quite some time over it. So you're gonna, let's say you want to get that style from Disney. So let's say you're going to spend a whole month, and in every drawing that you do, you're going to have a reference from Disney, and you're going to start drawing that. Let's say you want to draw, I don't know, you want to draw a lion, and you want to use the movie The Lion King in order to bring that style into your work. So first, you're going to start to, try to get the style from what makes The Lion King look like The Lion King. And then later on, you're going to start to mix a little bit of what you like to do with the movie The Lion King. And but there's something very important as well. When we talk about style, is it's like a way for you to try to figure it out how to draw some certain things. For example, you're going to notice that in The Lion King, the paw is going to have a very distinct look. I'm just doing a really rough representation, and you're going to see that other movie styles, they're going to draw the paws in a different way. Like you're going to notice, for example, like Simba's paw is going to look very round like this. You're going to see from other studios, when they draw the paw, they're going to keep that, they're going to keep it, the shapes like very sharp. Like one example of that is the movie Madagascar. When you look at Alex the lion's hands and paws, they look very squarey. Like even Alex mane is going to look really there's going to be the shape right here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's like a stop sign. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna have that stop sign shape, and then for the head, like I don't quite remember what he exactly looks, but this is what you're gonna have. Like the shapes are gonna look very like geometric, and then the nose here is really big, so that's going to show you how much you can push your drawing style, because if you want to exaggerate how to draw a lion, you have to make sure that he still looks like a lion. So you look at Alex the lion from Madagascar, and that's a lion, even though that the proportions, they look extremely exaggerated. Same thing goes for the other animals, like the hippopotamus and the zebra and the giraffe from the movie. And then you look at how these animals look in The Lion King, and they're like, it still looks cartoony, but they look a little bit more close to the proportions of what a lion looks like. Of course, in the Disney style, the heads are going to be much bigger than Simba's ears. They're just ginormous. And then once you make these comparisons between styles, you're going to start to feel more confident into the decisions that you're going to make, especially if you're making some variations for client work. You have to know how to make these variations.
So how many times have you drawn Simba?
just a lot of times, especially when I was a kid. These days, not so much, but when I was drawing a lot of stuff from the Lion King, it was just all the time. I would turn on the TV, and watch that same movie over and over and over again. Same thing goes for Tarzan. I just loved the way that they drew the gorillas, and I would say all these movies, like The Fox and the Hound too. I just draw them like all the time.
Yeah,
And
I love the gorillas from Tarzan. They're very stylized, unique looking.
oh yes, I love that movie as well. It's just fantastic the way that they draw these animals. But yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily just for movies. You can actually go ahead and look for a style that you like from an artist that you saw online, and if you go ahead, put some time on the side and start drawing them. It's been at least like a few weeks drawing from that style, and then you can just move on, and try to draw from another artist, because that's actually really important, because that's going to build little by little your artistic identity. And by no means that's not going to let's say make you lose your style. That's actually the complete opposite, because the style is going to be a mix of a bunch of stuff, including things that you like. So it's style is all about looking for solutions, like I explained with Simba's paw. Also that's also a great way for you to figure it out, how to simplify to draw a paw. Like if you're doing a dresser drawing, you can just roughly do Simba's paw over it, like use that same style, and then go ahead and refine your drawing.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give these wonderful folks that have stuck around a quick preview of your course on XMD Academy. Let me grab the screen from you real quick and I'll give it back to you.
All right.
Let's see. All right, so Esther's course on XMD Academy. For everyone that is watching the webinar, we're actually going to give you 35% off if you want to join within the next week. There's only 15 spots for the course, and they're probably going to fill up pretty quick. So if you want to use Webinar Champion for a coupon, it works on the on-demand and the live. Live is a one-on-one mentorship with Esther. How we're going to work it is Esther will give a interview with each person the first week and find out what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, what you want to work on. And then once she finds all that out, then she'll work with you each week to develop your style, your portfolio, work with you through the content. With every XMD course, you get the content immediately, all of it. So if you sign up now, our course registration completely closes in 23 days, and then your course will start with Esther, your one-on-one. But if you register today, you'll get all the content up front, and you'll be able to go through it. So then whenever you have your one-on-ones with Esther, you'll know what you need to work on. So I do advise signing up quickly, because the course will definitely, it's going to sell out pretty quick, because it is got some amazing content. You're going to go over anatomy, structure, hard surface, props and objects, developing your own style, drawing from imagination. So yeah, you're going to go through in the first it's the first module? Yeah, it's first module that you have block out for your forms. And then for the next 3 modules, you'll have lion, horse, and dog anatomy. You're going to go through line work and gestures. Then Ester goes through values, and then you get into shading and lighting and a bunch about the painting process. So yeah, I mean, you can also get a couple of previews of some of the videos. If you go ahead and sign up, there's a free preview button. So check that out and you can give it a go. And Esther, you got anything you want to add about your course?
I think you said pretty much everything.
Yeah, we've there's a go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh no, never mind. You can just go ahead and sorry.
Yeah, there will be a few requirements if you want to follow along 100%. We list all the requirements on the site. You can probably get away with not having some things and still be able to follow along. Some of them are suggestions, but you definitely got to have some type of equivalent software, Photoshop, so you can actually do your work. I would definitely suggest some type of drawing tablet. There are cheaper versions like XP Pen, and Huon has a good one, and even Wacom has some cheaper versions. So yeah, I definitely recommend this course, and go ahead and jump on in. Webinar Champion, use that and it'll give you 35% off the course right now, and that coupon will be running for the next week. So
yeah, I'd like to give a little personal story. Can I give a little personal story?
Oh, definitely. From
right.
you, Spicer, I definitely want to
All
hear
right.
your story.
All right. So I have I'm looking for client work, and finally these people are like, hey, yeah, we got some work for you. How good are you at sculpting animals? I'm like, I'm really good at it. And so I usually sculpt people only, right? So I think I've never even attempted to like sculpt any animals. So, but with my basic anatomy knowledge, I was kind of able to kind of block it out. But this was for Dior, and there was their storefronts. And the only reason I took the job was because I knew I could have Esther help me. And so I would sculpt what I could sculpt, and then I would send it to Esther, and then she would draw over it and, accentuate this, this here, kind of meld this together, all this stuff. And the client was so thoroughly happy with the end result. And I could not have done it without Esther. And she's very good at breaking things down and simplifying things and teaching you how to look at anatomy and how to simplify it down so that you can consistently create the animal that you're looking for. So, she's a really great teacher, very patient, very sweet. And, if you can get in on this mentorship, it's going to be worth every single dollar you pay for it. Everything that we have here at XMD pays for it, usually right out of the class. They've either got a gig or they've got a job. Like, I think for mine, it's at least 2 students per semester get gigs or get hired by studios. And I have no doubt that Esther is going to have an even better turnout on that. So if you just apply yourself and you kick ass and just let Esther lay your foundations down, there's no way that you're not going to succeed. So please take the chance to get this course, get it now before anybody else, and get that coupon in there, because I wouldn't have agreed to 35%. I'm just saying that right now. I wouldn't have agreed to 35%. Would have been, like 5% or 10%.
Yeah, but I'm the CEO, CFO, and janitor. So,
Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely get in on this course. If you know anyone that even sculpts animals, this course is going to help them. It's not just strictly 2D and painting. It is for 3D artists, 2D artists, illustrators, all these things. So yeah, get in, let people know about it. And if you do, I'm pretty sure Mike and I will help you out in one way or another.
Yeah, Esther, if you want to draw a little bit more for a few more, we can take some questions and answers for a few minutes and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, sounds good.
So you can share your screen again if you wish.
Yep.
If anybody's got any questions, just throw them into the chat and we'll get them answered.
I got a question.
All right.
So like, when we're on our way up to being employable or, good enough to get paid, what was the amount of grinding hours you would put in per day? Or, like obviously, there's life, there's, I feel a little bit lazy today, but in general, when you were grinding and you were trying to get to that professional level, how many hours were you putting in? And I know it's not all about the hours, but what you do in those hours. Could you talk a little bit about that for a second?
So what do you mean by grinding? Just so I understand, what is
Just
the
like putting
meaning
in
of
the
that word?
work. Yeah, putting pen to paper, putting that mileage down, on pen and paper, and just grinding out and staying up late, working all day, all night. You know what I'm talking about? Just
Oh, I mean, like
putting it in.
at the very start, right?
Yeah, like when you're
Oh,
trying to get to
okay.
that professional level. Yeah.
Oh, yes. It was, at first, it was a lot of work because I would actually do a lot of extra hours because there was a lot of content that I didn't really know how to like draw it yet. I was still, as I was working, there was still some stuff that I was trying to learn how to keep it simple. So let's say I would get hired for some type of work. I would tell the client I would spend this amount of time, but then I would actually spend the double. And to me, that was to me it was a really rewarding experience because as I was doing it, I was learning a lot, and little by little, I started to get faster at the work. So if I tell the client I'll do this amount of hours, I would keep with that same time amount of hours. So it's something that at the beginning, like I think it's going to happen with a lot of artists. Actually, that still happens with some artists in the industry, depending on the work that you're doing, but it's not going to be the same amount of, let's say, I don't know, doing the double work. So it's just like being patient and taking your time and just having fun with the process. But of course, you cannot overdo it. Let's say you are doing extra hours for that client, and then you see yourself actually doing more than you're supposed to do. So in other words, you would be getting paid less, and that can actually really exhaust you and frustrate you. So I want you to keep in mind to keep a balance between doing over hours and at the same time make sure that you're not getting yourself super exhausted. That was one time that I was doing so much work. I was so in the drive of, I was getting a lot of client work, and I would just sit in my computer for like, I don't know, 14 hours every day, and that was not good for my health. So I started to just balance things out and, keep it between 8 to 10 hours, and eventually you're just going to get the hang of it.
Yeah, because what used to take me 8 to 10 hours now takes me about 2 hours.
Yes.
Just because of muscle memory, you've done it so many times. You put in all the hours, and like plenty of times when I'm teaching with students who are like I'll take their sculpt and like 15 minutes later it looks way way better, and they're like, God, you make it look so easy. I'm like, well, it is. It's a
Yeah.
formula. It's like the anatomy that you teach. It's a formula. No matter where this thing is, no matter how I twist this neck, where it originates from and where it goes to will always be the same. And that
Yeah.
really sped up my process like a whole lot. Just knowing what's happening underneath. But yeah, like grinding the hours. I mean, yeah, 8 to 14, trying to get to the professional level. And then when you get to the professional level, you put in more work because like you just want to make sure it's really really good, and
Oh, yeah.
you want to keep that client, you want to make that client happy, and you just put in more hours. But finding that balance is something that took a long time, and it
Oh,
Like
yes.
it took exhaustion. It took making huge mistakes. It took, bad health, to be like, as much as I
Oh,
love doing
yes.
this, as much as I, want to make my client happy, I got to stick around to make my client happy, so.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Like actually, when I have like clients that I really like to work with them, I put the extra hours to make that just look even better. Not that I do that with new clients. I do that for every client, but the ones that I stick around longer, it's always a pleasure, to put that extra time, to make it look better. And of course, my work, I work much faster than before. Like you said, when you draw the same thing over and over and over again, it just becomes like it's just daily stuff, and you can just get those shapes pretty easily, and yeah, and it's pretty good. Also, I just want to mention just one little thing that I'm doing here that is just my favorite part. I usually put this dark patches over here, and that's what we call the occlusion shadow. These are the details. It's pretty much like the shadow that is not reached by any light at all. So that's going to be the darkest part of the subject that you're drawing. So sometimes I just do a little touch of the occlusion shadow in some areas, and that really gives a nice touch, like especially over here where the cougar is touching the grass. So it gives that sense of weight, that these two surfaces are touching each other.
Got a question from Akumo. Says, not to be the which pen do you use guy, but my question is it better to start learning to draw on paper or tablet? Because I've tried both and they feel quite different. And I feel like I should focus on one until I get into the flow. What would you recommend?
I think, to be honest with you, start with what makes you more comfortable, and also think of think of the digital media as if it's like another painting style, just like watercolor or you're doing charcoal work. If you're going to do digital work, think of it as another media, and you all you have to do is to master it. Same thing if you're learning to paint with oil painting, you just have to take some time to master that media. Because you're going to have, with watercolor, I've done just a little bit, but from what I hear from other artists, there's a type of paint that sometimes you have to wait for the paint to dry off, and then you have to go ahead and continue your painting. So you gotta have that patience, with, and with digital work. Also, there are some things that you have to be very mindful because when you're painting in a tablet, everything is so much easier, especially because you get to erase anything you want. You can control all the layers and everything. And that can actually be a big danger because you might not even pay attention to it, but you might be uh, make you might not be thinking about working in layers, like not literal layers here, but I'm talking in terms of like thinking of the process. So, and that goes for any type of work that you're doing. If you're doing a sketch, you have to think of that process of this, the rough sketch, the gesture drawing, and then you go ahead and make another layer. What I mean by layer is like working towards the values, you know what I mean? So you start with lighter value, and then you start to add the darker values later on. And with painting, it's the same thing. So you always have to keep in mind to organize your layers. And sometimes that can actually help you how to figure it out traditional work. And doing traditional work, but that's just me. That doesn't, that can happen that doesn't have to happen to everybody. But traditional work helped me a lot to figure it out, some things I was struggling with in the digital media, because my brush work would look very wacky. You know, I would just be very spontaneous while you're painting, but I wasn't thinking of the brush stroke and the direction that it was going. And once I started to be more aware of it, I started to be more cautious on the way that I work with my brush strokes. And I started to see that reflecting more on both traditional and digital media.
Yeah, because I would, you know, like I have students that ask, you know, should I, you know, how much do you draw? Do you draw at all? And you know, I draw on pen and paper, I draw pencil and paper, and I just like pencil and paper and an eraser. You know, I've always enjoyed that. And I've always, whenever students like, you know, what should I sculpt or should I draw? What should I draw with? I'm like, whatever you have and whatever you enjoy doing, you know, like whatever keeps you in this longer and happier, you should do that. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to like force yourself to use a certain type of media. You just, you know, first of all, like Spicy said, you have to enjoy it. You have to have fun at first, and then you're going to start to see the results. Also, what I'm doing here is something that you can apply um, on your traditional drawings as well. I see a lot of artists when they do traditional, they use Prismacolors like pens, and the effect that you're going to see here is going to be very similar. You know, so if I were drawing this traditionally, I would use, it doesn't have to be Prismacolor. I'm just talking about like the feeling that that pen gives it, you know, and I will add it right here in the background just to add that contrast here. And the same thing goes for where I added the shading right over here. And you're going to notice that I'm constantly adjusting the layers. And if you're doing traditional work, always keep in mind that you cannot do that. Like once you put it on paper, you have to stick to it. And that's something that is going to, you're going to learn a lot of good values, you know, doing traditional. You're going to learn to be more careful, especially if you're going to move to the digital media. You know, but once you're aware that you know that you can control those layers, then you know, you can have the freedom, you know, to adjust the layers and do everything else. But also the digital media is pretty good to make different experiments. Let's say if you don't feel comfortable into experimenting on a piece of paper, you know, you can use Photoshop and just do a little trial and see what possibilities that you can do, maybe using the traditional media. That works for some, let's say I want to do client work. Sometimes I will do a little mix of, I do it digitally and then I put it on paper to see how it's going to work, or vice versa. I draw it on paper, and if I'm going to put the final product on my computer, you know, then I'll just go ahead and use my computer to do the cleanup. And then over here, I alternate a little bit between the smudge tool and then I add the pencil strokes again.
We're gonna run probably about 4 more minutes and
Okay.
then we'll wrap it up. So if anybody's got any questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll get them answered before we call it a night.
And also, as I mentioned before, for the patches of fur, I usually add them on the extremities of like the body, like in the edge, like for example over here, just to give the idea that there is fur in there. And always make sure, like, follow the flow of the painting, you know, or sketch or whatever you're doing. And if I did my strokes this way, then if I'm gonna add the darker valleys, I'm gonna follow the same flow as well. And then once I feel like it's almost done, that's something you don't really have to do it. That's something that it's just part of my process. I'll go ahead and I just merge everything, because from here I'll be confident enough to like very small touches. And let me just add the whiskers and it's done.
Can you give
And
it a
that's
fur
it.
pattern that says XMD Academy? Can you do that real quick?
Wait, what?
I said, can you give it a fur pattern that says XMD Academy in like 30 seconds?
Okay. Oh my god.
Yeah, this is great. This is great, Esther. Like, yeah, I always wondered. Well, I always noticed, you know, line weight, but I never knew why they did it. I just knew that I liked it. But you know, what you said about, you know, separating forms and perspective and all that stuff, it really helped me understand. So,
Oh, I'm glad.
yeah.
That's good.
So, yeah. So good job. I had a great time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I hope everybody had a wonderful time. There will be a replay of this. It'll be available, and I'll email it out to everyone that has signed up or registered. And definitely check out Esther's course, xmdacademy.com. I will put the link to it. Yeah, jump in there, sign up quick. Everything is it's definitely going to sell out pretty quick. I know a lot of people are interested already, so jump in there, grab a spot when you can. Yeah, and we'll see you in there.
Oh, yes.
So where does that name come from? Was it Tachan? Is that how you say it?